Have you ever felt like you know a historical story, but maybe suspect there's a whole lot more beneath the surface? We often get these simplified versions of huge events like the partition of India and, the creation of Pakistan. Today, we're going to try and peel back some of those layers. Our deep dive today comes from a really remarkable source, a book arguing that Pakistan wasn't just some accident or an insufficiently imagined state. Instead, it argues, it was plentifully imagined and fiercely contested right from the start. We're going to explore the intense debates, the very different visions that shaped the nation. And we'll focus particularly through the lens of the United Provinces, the UP, in pre-partition India.
That's exactly right. The mission here is to move past those common narratives, the ones that sort of suggest Pakistan just kind of happened. Instead, we'll uncover how its fundamental nature as an ideological state was really debated, maybe even engineered right from its core, years before 1947. And by a surprising range of people, too. You've got constitutional lawyers, intellectuals, deeply religious scholars, passionate poets, all weighing in. I mean, this level of thinking ahead, this public engagement, it really challenges that idea of a simple accidental birth.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then. Before that huge turning point, the Lahore Resolution in 1940, what did the political landscape actually look like for Muslims in India, particularly in the UP? It sounds like a pretty complex web of alliances and divisions. What was the Muslim League's position, say, after the 1937 provincial elections?
Well, yeah, complex is the word. The 1935 Government of India Act really shook things up, introduced new political dynamics, and that created some pretty significant rifts among Muslim political groups. The Muslim League, the ML, they had to navigate this. And they faced opposition, interestingly, even from some Muslim landlords, people like Nawab Chaudhary and Nawab Muhammad Yusuf. They actually favored cross-communal parties, like the National Agriculturalist Party, the NAP. Their argument was basically that purely communal parties would trap Muslims as a permanent minority in this new system. And, their economic interests as landowners, as zamindars, were better protected in mixed parties.
That's interesting. And then you mentioned Congress, which we often think of as predominantly Hindu, but they launched a Muslim mass contact program. That sounds quite counterintuitive. Who was behind that, and what were they hoping to achieve?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It was spearheaded mainly by Kunwar Muhammad Ashraf. He was a communist, actually, and a key figure close to Nehru. Ashraf himself was a Mayo, that's a community known for blending Muslim and Hindu traditions. And he'd had this quite personal journey, moving away from spirituality towards Marxism. Apparently after a Sufi exercise didn't go as planned.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And Nehru was reportedly, very proud of Ashraf and what he called his brilliant group of young Muslims who joined Congress. Ashraf's thinking was this. Okay, Congress might have started with Hindu capitalist leadership, but it was changing, becoming a mass movement. He argued that if radicalized Muslim masses joined in large numbers, they could actually help push out the capitalist and, quote, Hindu reactionary elements, essentially transform Congress into a better vehicle for revolution.
Wow. So using Congress to change Congress itself?
Pretty much. He even suggested Congress should, distance itself from Hindu social reform stuff to make it more appealing to Muslims.
So Congress is making this aggressive play. How did the Muslim League react? People like Liaquat Ali Khan or the Raja of Mahmudabad, how did they push back? And did this push them towards defining Pakistan more clearly?
Well, they definitely saw the mass contact program as a threat, a deliberate attempt to, split the Muslim community. They compared it to how some Hindu leaders spoke out against separate electorates for the untouchables, seeing it as a way to undermine Muslim solidarity.
Right.
And Mahmudabad, interestingly, tried to counter with his own vision of Islamic socialism. He claimed that Prophet Muhammad had actually started the world's oldest socialist creed 1,300 years earlier.
Islamic socialism. Okay.
But, and this is crucial, even though the idea of Pakistan got some early acceptance, like at the Sindh Provincial Conference, it stayed really vague for quite a while. The ML didn't immediately put out a clear constitutional plan. And that vagueness, as we'll see, became a real point of debate.
Okay, so the Lahore Resolution happens in 1940. It lays down the marker, but the actual shape of Pakistan is still fuzzy. You're saying it wasn't just Jinnah making speeches. There was another key intellectual figure, maybe a surprising one, who really helped give it concrete form, force the issue.
Exactly, and this is where it gets really striking. B.R. Ambedkar.
Ambedkar, wow. We usually associate him with the Indian Constitution, Dalit rights.
Right. But he was incredibly influential in shaping the public debate on Pakistan. I mean, just 4 months after the Lahore Resolution, he published this detailed 400-page book, Thoughts on Pakistan. It was described at the time as a prescient, prodigious work of scholarship. It became like an indispensable reference, a roadmap for constitutional options for everyone involved.
400 pages in 4 months. That's incredible speed.
Prodigious, yeah. And the key insight, I think, is that Ambedkar, despite everything else he was doing, effectively forced the Pakistan debate onto solid ground. He moved it from just an idea, an aspiration, to a detailed, constitutional, even existential challenge. He basically set the terms for the whole discussion that followed.
So what were his main arguments in the book? What concerns did he raise?
Well, he argued pretty starkly that Hindus and Muslims had basically no shared historical background. He likened them to two armed battalions warring against one another. He warned people not to try and just bury the ghost of Pakistan, saying it would just come back stronger. And he pointed to history's secession examples like the American Civil War, Natal from South Africa, Western Australia, as reasons why forcing unity might not work.
He also had security concerns, didn't he?
Yes, grave concerns. He talked about pan-Islamism among Indian Muslims and questioned if Muslims in a unified Indian army would stay loyal, would they side with potential Muslim invaders? That was his fear. And he issued a chilling warning about what might happen to Hindus in a future Pakistan, comparing their potential fate to Armenians under the Turks, or Jews in Tsarist Russia, or Nazi Germany. Really strong stuff.
Wow. Okay, so Ambedkar lays out these incredibly detailed, very serious critiques. The public is demanding clarity. How did the Muslim League respond? How did they start promoting their vision and counter these points about viability, about minority rights?
Jinnah definitely moved strategically. He launched the Dawn newspaper in Delhi, specifically as an English outlet to, quote, faithfully mirror the views of the Muslim League. You had supporting Urdu papers like Manshur and Nawai Waqt. That last one was apparently started purely for the propagation of Pakistan.
Building a media ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He even set up the Orient News Agency. The goal was to break free from what they saw as the stranglehold of Hindu-owned news agencies. And the ML created its own propaganda, too, through something called the Home Study Circle. They put out these twin volumes by a journalist, Muhammad Sharif's Tusi Pakistan, and Muslim India and Nationalism in Conflict in India. Jinnah actually wrote forewords for both, praising them for proving Pakistan was feasible economically, politically, militarily.
So what arguments did Tusi make? How did he frame Pakistan's viability?
Well, Tusi went further than just viable. He presented Pakistan as potentially a far more prosperous and powerful entity than Hindu India. He linked Pakistan to the wider Islamic world, even suggesting it could be a kind of successor to the Ottoman Caliphate.
That's ambitious.
Very. Economically, he played up the strengths of West Pakistan, the strongest and healthiest population. Claimed a stalwart Pathan or Punjabi could do twice as much work as a South Indian.
Okay. Contentious stuff even then, I imagine.
Definitely. He even suggested Pakistan and Hindustan could just share the defense costs for the northwest frontier. Jinnah himself tended to dismiss the economic worries as just Congress propaganda. He famously said, if worse comes to the worst, like a sensible man, we will cut our coat according to our cloth.
Pragmatic.
And he also set up a planning committee with technical experts to properly assess Pakistan's economic potential. So they were working on the details behind the scenes.
Right. So we've got these big political arguments, economic plans being floated. But what about the religious dimension, the soul of the movement? How did the Islamic scholars, the ulama, line up on Pakistan? Did they all agree? And how public were these debates?
Oh, far from agreeing. This is another key point. The whole idea of Pakistan sparked this really deep, often bitter debate among the ulama. It split them into fiercely opposing camps. And this wasn't just, quiet theological discussion. It spilled out into public view, massively influencing public opinion.
So religion itself was a battleground for the idea of Pakistan?
Exactly. It shows there was never just one single agreed-upon Islamic vision. It was a complex ideological fight right from the beginning.
So who are the main opponents among the ulama?
Well, a major group allied with Congress was the Jamiatul Ulama-e Hind, the JUH. They strongly opposed Pakistan. Maulana cited Muhammad Sajjad, for instance, called it the straw of Islamic Pakistan. He particularly attacked the hostage population theory, that idea that Hindus in Pakistan could be used as leverage if Muslims in India were mistreated. He argued that kind of policy was completely contrary to the Sharia, Islamic law. Another figure, Maulvi Tufail Ahmad Manglori, worried that Muslims left behind in India, in the minority provinces, would be condemned to live in Kufristan, a land of infidels, under the Pakistan plan. He actually argued for joint electorates to protect their representation, and Maulana Hussain Rahman Seharvi went even further. He called Pakistan a British invention, designed to let Britain keep control of ports like Calcutta and Karachi. He accused the ML leaders of just being opportunists. He even reportedly suggested Jinnah was an atheist, a monkir, who just used Islam as a social marker for political gain.
Wow, calling Jinnah an atheist, that's strong criticism from a religious scholar.
Absolutely. The Seharvi warned that partition would shrink Islam, turn it from this big ethical, cultural, and ideological program into just a geographical program tied only to Pakistan.
Okay, so fierce opposition from that side. How did the pro-Pakistan ulama fight back? What was their theological justification?
Well, you had figures like Maulana Shabir Ahmad Usmani. He actually founded a rival group, the Jamiatul Ulama-e-Islam, the JUI, specifically to support the MLO. Usmani argued the two-nation theory came straight from the Quran. He said it classified humanity basically into mu'min, believer, and kafir, infidel. All other Muslim distinctions, he argued, just merged into the ocean of Islam.
So a fundamental religious division justifying a political one.
Yes, and interestingly, Usmani acknowledged Jinnah's perceived faults, his alleged sinfulness and debauchery. But he justified supporting the League anyway. Why? Because, in his view, they were fighting mushreks, polytheists. That was the greater priority. He even made this powerful comparison. The sacrifices Muslims in minority provinces would make were like those of the original Muhajirin, the companions who migrated with the Prophet to Medina to establish Pakistan, likening Pakistan to a new Medina.
That's a very potent image. So beyond these high-level political and religious arguments, what about everyday culture? Were there other issues sparking debate?
Oh, definitely. It wasn't all just abstract doctrine. These ideas were debated everywhere, homes, mosques, even, through street poetry. Language was a huge flashpoint. Urdu versus Hindi. You had pro-ML figures like Maulana Sayyid Sulaiman Nadvi arguing Urdu was a joint creation of Hindus and Muslims. He dismissed Hindi as a newcomer, basically a product of British policy.
But wasn't Urdu widely spoken by Hindus too?
Yes, and that's why even some non-Muslim Urdu lovers, like the prominent lawyer Sir Tej Bahadur Fastru, worried that the push for Hindustani was really just a cover for uprooting Urdu.
And national symbols, flags, songs.
Huge battlegrounds. The Muslim League fiercely objected to flying the Congress tricolor flag or singing the song Bande Mataram at official events. They argued these were Hindu symbols alien to Muslim culture.
In Congress?
Congress defended them, saying they were inclusive, historically significant. They argued Bande Mataram referred to 30 crores of Indians, meaning everyone. So even symbols became deeply contested territory.
Okay, so you've painted this picture of incredibly passionate, widespread public debate. Politics, economics, religion, culture, all feeding into this. Which means those 1945-46 elections, they weren't just normal elections, were they? They sound like a de facto referendum on Pakistan itself.
Exactly. That's precisely how they were framed and fought.
So how did the Muslim League actually mobilize support, especially in a key place like the UP, given, as you mentioned, they even had internal conflicts? And how did their opponents try to stop them?
Right. Despite those internal issues like clashes between the old guard, Nawab Ismail Khan, Khaliqa Zaman, and a newer group under SM Rizwanullah, the ML ran an incredibly energetic campaign. They heavily used Islamic imagery and symbolism. Students from Aligarh Muslim University became absolutely crucial foot soldiers. Jinnah famously called Aligarh the arsenal of Muslim India.
The power of student activism.
Absolutely. And Urdu poetry was massive for mobilizing people. You have these really emotional slogans chanted at huge public meetings. Things like, Pakistan hum lekar aayenge, baat ke rahega Hindustan.
Which means?
We will achieve Pakistan by dividing Hindustan. And another one, Pakistan ki ufat mein, apna jina marna hai.
In this mad love for Pakistan, we will live or give up life. Powerful stuff.
Extremely.
Yeah.
The campaign messaging was often stark, using Islam in danger slogans, framing the election literally as a battle between kufr and Islam, between disbelief and faith. There was even this widely shared, pretty nasty cartoon depicting the Congress candidate in Moradabad being carried on a Hindu bier for cremation.
Wow, really visceral.
Very. And the cartoon showed prominent Congress leaders, including Hindu figures like Gandhi and Nehru carrying the bier, with Congress Muslims lighting the pyre. Intense stuff.
So how did the opposition, the JUH and Congress, try to counter that kind of campaign?
They pushed back hard. They kept hammering the message that Pakistan was a British invention. They warned Muslims who stayed in India that they'd become aliens with no rights. There was an argument made by Rafi Ahmad to Kidwai. And they accused ML leaders again of just being opportunist British stooges. It was a fierce counterattack.
So after all that, All the campaigning, the slogans, the warnings, the poetry. What happened? What was the result of this intense battle for the Muslim vote?
The result was pretty unambiguous. The Muslim League scored what the source calls a decisive victory in the Muslim seats. They won something like 82% of the nearly 900 seats reserved for Muslims across India and also gained control of 44 municipalities.
82%. That's huge.
It really was. And that electoral outcome basically cemented the idea that Pakistan wasn't just some bargaining chip Jinnah was using in talks. It now looked like a powerful, popular mandate.
So Pakistan is created, August 1947. But did all those intense imaginations, those fierce contests just stop? How did the immediate aftermath, which was often brutal, reflect or maybe even challenge those pre-partition visions? And where did Jinnah stand in all this chaos?
Yeah, that's a crucial question, isn't it? How did the reality match the dream? Well, the initial responses back in the UP, where many Muslims remained, were complicated. You had a mix of loyalty pledges and some pretty stark new realities. Some prominent Muslim League figures like Z.H. Lari actually made public statements declaring their loyalty to the Indian Union, saying they cherished their Indian citizenship and would not be looking to Pakistan for protection.
Trying to navigate the new situation.
Exactly. But the source notes the general mood was often hostile to such nuanced positions. The reality set in fast. Reports of Muslim officers leaving government posts for Pakistan, huge pressure to cut Muslim representation in the services that remained. Even instances where Muslims were reportedly forced to salute the Indian flag just to prove their loyalty. A tense atmosphere.
And what about critiques from within Pakistan itself? Did the reality immediately meet the expectations?
Not entirely, it seems. There were immediate criticisms. The source highlights a moment with Jamal Mian, a Muslim League leader. He apparently delivered this fiery speech attacking the new Pakistan government in Karachi. Reportedly just burst out, "For God's sake, do not call yourself a Muslim state and thereby blemish the fair name of Islam. You have exploited Islam enough."
Wow. Strong words from inside the league.
Very. And he challenged them further, saying something like, "If you insist on calling yourself a Muslim state, we expect the standards of the pious caliphs. But you can't live like them when bribery and corruption are rampant under your rule."
So disillusionment setting in quickly for some.
It appears so. And back in India, some nationalist Muslims who had opposed partition felt vindicated perhaps, but also deeply saddened. Professor Muhammad Habib at Aligarh Muslim University apparently expressed thorough repentment of the lead vote of 1945. He felt the unity of Indian Islam was broken forever. He reportedly said he refused to be moved into that culturalist land where an alleged devotion to Islam begins and ends with the hatred of Hinduism.
That's a very bitter assessment.
It is. But amidst all this trauma, the reality of what Jinnah himself called a moth-eaten, truncated Pakistan. Jinnah himself, according to the source, kept this fierce optimism. He still envisioned Pakistan becoming not just the largest Islamic nation, but the fifth largest nation in the world.
Holding on to the grand vision despite the messy reality.
Seems so. And connecting this to the bigger picture. Those debates about what an Islamic state actually means, they didn't end in 1947. They just continued inside Pakistan. There was broad agreement maybe on wanting an Islamic state based on Sharia law, but zero consensus on what that looked like in practice. Should it be a unitary, pan-Islamic state, something adapted for the modern world? Those debates raged on. And the source concludes, really, that Pakistan's origin wasn't insufficiently imagined at all. It was plentifully imagined, maybe even over-imagined, and with ambition. It argues that this whole concept of the ideological state was baked into its nationalism from day one. And perhaps the persistent crises that confront Pakistan today are, in this view, fundamentally linked back to that initial ambition, that ongoing challenge of trying to fulfill the expectation of being a new Medina.
What a journey. We've gone through these really intricate, often contradictory ways Pakistan was imagined, so far beyond the simple stories. We've seen how deep these visions went, how diverse they were, and just how fiercely people argued about them politically, intellectually, religiously.
Yeah, it's really striking, isn't it? What stands out most to you from all this? For me, maybe it's the sheer intellectual force of someone like Ambedkar, just laying out that blueprint. Or maybe the ulama grappling with these huge theological questions right in the middle of immense political change. Or just how ideas from completely different corners seem to converge and clash.
For me, it might be that tension between the grand ideal and the messy reality right from the start. Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe a provocative one for you listening. If the dream of Pakistan wasn't just about politics, but also this quest for a new Medina, an ideal state, What does the ongoing story of Pakistan and maybe the whole region tell us about the power, but also the inherent challenges of building a nation not just on land, but on an ideal? What happens when you pursue what some might call an impossible state? And how does that pursuit keep shaping its destiny, its identity, even today?